Look at this place. It's the most beautiful place I've ever seen. It's out of a storybook. I mean, I couldn't explain it any other way. Just look at it. Just take a look. It's blowing my mind. I love it. I love this. This is why I do this. I love my life right now. My name is Mitchell Auger-Langejan, and I walked and biked across Canada in the years 2013 to 2014. I walked across Canada totally as just a personal endeavor. There wasn't any extremely profound reason to do so. I just thought it'd be something I'd really enjoy. I wanted to see Canada because, I mean, when you grow up in Canada, you grow up in a city and they show you the map of it, and you really don't get a concept of how huge it is. I mean, you get this vague idea that you're living on an extremely massive expanse of land, but you have no intention of really seeing it all. So that struck me as a curiosity for sure. Day after day, I'd read fiction related to it, such as Cheryl Strayed, her book Wild, The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit. They all really romanticized adventure in a way that appealed to me. It seemed like a really gratifying and beautiful experience, which I think it turned out to be. My gear was fairly simple. The big three with hiking is your backpack, your sleeping bag, and your shelter. So I got a 45-liter rucksack, and the gear would change as it wore, or I decided to improve upon it. I had a synthetic sleeping bag that was rated to -7, and then I had a two-man shelter tent, the Tarrant 2, and I started the trip from Victoria all the way to Calgary with my buddy Riley. I met Riley through cadets. We spent a summer together in 2010, going through the Rockies together. And we basically just been hanging out since we met. I really, really enjoyed British Columbia. You're just immediately struck by just gorgeous views one after another. Riley and I's relationship I always feel like it was fairly strong. When we started the trip, we were excited to get it going. And it was really good for quite a while, but we ran into speed bumps nearly immediately. We had different motivations on the trip. He was very interested in achieving, essentially that's it in itself, achievement. He really wanted to get quite far every day. He wanted to challenge himself, and I think he got enjoyment through that aspect of traveling. My motivations lied more so in sightseeing, or the exploration, or the understanding of things around me. We didn't take any breaks till Calgary, aside from the occasional day or two off in nice towns like Golden and that kind of thing. And at Calgary, we decided to part ways, so I went home. I imagine that I got on his nerves, and likewise with me stopping to want to see everything and him not wanting to do that. So we ran into difficulties that way, and we talked about it, and we did sort that out for a long while, and we got remarkably far together despite having conflicting wants. I'd say by the end, when we got to Calgary, we were annoyed with each other, but we understood where we stood, and we decided to make plans from there. We're still friends. It all went respectfully, and yeah, I think that these things are natural. When I first returned on my trip, I found it quite hard to be on my own. It was just such a difference. I mean, when I began the trip, it was in the summer with someone, and it was just much easier, more enjoyable terrain. When I started up again, I landed my plane in a blizzard in Calgary Airport. So it was cold, it was difficult. I mean, everything was just a struggle, right? You had to keep your water warm, or you didn't get to drink. I mean, when you went to sleep, you had to sleep next to freezing water. And you didn't have much choice in that, because you're gonna want to drink water in the morning, and if it's frozen, you can't drink it. So, and I had coyotes following me all the time. You're essentially walking on a long, flat, frozen waste of a plain, and you're all alone, and you basically have to keep walking until you get to a city. So doing that on my own from the other conditions is just a huge juxtaposition.
God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
I really had an unpleasant experience just as I was starting my hike again on my own. I was walking outside of Calgary on my way to Glycan, and I heard like this pattering of steps behind me, like these just little footsteps, and you kind of like trick yourself into thinking you're hearing things, because when you're hiking like that, you've got all this stuff over your ears, you've got a hood, you've got a toque and everything. Little rustlings to the sides of your flanks often turn out to be nothing, just snow falling or just you walking. But sure enough, it turned out to be a couple of feral stray dogs, and they actually quite aggressively attacked me, and I had to put a lot of effort into pushing them away. One jumped up on my arm, and it's attempted to get at my neck and bruised my left arm quite badly. And I'm not totally sure what their intentions were, but they seemed to have some direct interest in me. And I was able to beat them off eventually. I hurt one of them quite badly, and they did leave me alone. So I spent the rest of the day looking behind my back, and then that same night, like to my luck, I was putting my tent up, like nursing my arm, and I guess I was really tired. I didn't notice that one of the poles didn't quite go into the holes that holds the tent structure together, and it flicked out of the hole there, and it hit me right in my mouth, and my tooth went into my lip quite a bit, almost split it open. And so like I had all this blood like dribbling down me, and I fell backwards at the same time, and I fell into the ground. But the ground, despite it being frozen, was so eroded by gophers. These creatures destroy everything, and I just fell like between like 6 and 8 inches into the dirt, and these creatures scurried out of their holes on top of me, screeching and squeaking. And so like as this blood was freezing over me, like, you know, like my mouth and my chest and my hands and stuff like that, and I'd fallen in, and gophers were crawling over me, and dogs were going after me, and my electronics were breaking. Like this is my third day out, you know. I called my friend, and he picked me up, and I stayed 2 nights at his house while I healed up a little bit, and then I returned to my trip. So that was essentially how my trip began after I started hiking on my own. So naturally I was discouraged. And there's just a whole village of these. They're gorgeous. They're well done. He does them all himself. Takes care of the whole place. It's a really impressive thing. I don't know, it's like there's stuff like this all over Canada, and you never know what you'll find. And he's actually said that you can sleep here. There's a few of these places that are genuinely not bad. There's beds in there. There's heating. Well, not much heating, but the lights turn on when you enter the place. It's impressive. And I don't know. I really like this. This is some of the reason I'm out here. Really enjoying it. When you're on your own, you have to rely on yourself much more. Anything you choose not to do will impact how you're doing. Really, it impacts your experience. So everything that you want to do is up to you. If you decide, you know, not to clean your pot the best that day, you're going to have to deal with that later that day and have like really disgusting oatmeal or something. It's literally every single responsibility or want you could have is totally up to you. And that's different when you're hiking with someone, is they might say something, or they might, you know, ask you how you're doing, or make a comment on what you're doing and how you could improve it. And it makes it easier. Like the workload's shared, and overall the workload's reduced despite it being shared. And I decided walking on my own wasn't as enjoyable as I'd hoped it would be. So I went home and decided again if I'd finish the trip. And I thought, hey, I can always take my bike up. I mean, if anything, this trip's meant to be enjoyable, so I should figure out a mode of travel to finish this that'll, you know, benefit me. And that was the last break that I took.
You know, why not join me for the ride while I complain and see how long it takes? Okay. Oh, just chill. I'm doing this.
It's not that I can do it or that I can't do it. It's just that I don't want to. I didn't want to hike that far alone. It's not an enjoyable thing for me. And at the heart of this trip, it was to have fun. It was to enjoy myself and see things that I haven't before. So if the fatigue of hiking was taking that away from me just to, you know, feel like I'm doing some monumental tasks, that seemed like an incredibly vain and unnecessary thing to put myself through. So I switched to biking because I figured that it would be less tiring. I'd be able to see more, and it would reduce the time of my trip, which it did. It did all those things, and I was happy I switched.
Beautiful day, beautiful weather, wonderful topography the whole way down. About a 125 kilometer day, and Oh, it's just perfect. Today is just everything I want it to be.
I really liked Montreal. Montreal is a beautiful city. Culturally, I'd say it's a huge landmark in Canada. I'd say it's a really big centerpiece, just in general. Quebec City's another favorite. It's just really between like the belt between Quebec, Montreal, and Ottawa. It's just I find it's a cultural, historic centerpiece of Canada. It's really where a lot of the politics in Canada began, and you can really tell when you get there. It feels old. I mean, Montreal is still has cobble roads everywhere in old Montreal. There was a hamlet I remember in particular. It was a place called River Bourgeois. It's just on Cape Breton Island as you enter it on the eastern side, and it's essentially just this insular small area on a beautiful little inlet. And I stayed with these two people named Catherine and Bob Groves, and they invited me to their home. And as I got to their driveway, I found their address, and I was like, okay, this seems to be the place. It has this long dirt driveway, and immediately you look at the house, you tell it's a bit different. It just looks different from the surrounding area. And you get in, and you find that it's totally off the grid. They get all their water from wells and from their roof. They get all their electricity through solar panels on their shed outside. There's only like 2 large panels, and that's how they get all their electricity. And it immediately struck me, it's like, oh, this must be a different way to live. But a hurricane hit at the time, and I had to hide out for a couple days while I booked my ferry to Newfoundland from Sydney. And I got to stay with them, and they live this really pleasant lifestyle. It's quite nice. They tend to their garden, and they just pick zucchinis and cook food and hang out together. And Bob actually plays the tin whistle, and I played as well. We learned tunes together. It was just such a pleasant place to spend my time during the hurricane. It was a place that stood out particularly as a pleasant place, and they were actually neighbors to the adventure author Farley Mowat, which is just brought a whole world together for me, which I appreciated. Newfoundland struck me because of its remoteness of literally everything surrounding that isn't a city, which is most of Newfoundland. It's just really not barren at all. It's quite lush wilderness, and it's just these large hills from where I went from the southwest to the northeast, which is into St. John's on the far eastern edge of the island. And it's just these huge forests that stretch for miles and miles and miles. And it's just the ideas you get is just the stories people tell you. It's like, oh yeah, I was driving last weekend. I heard a buddy hit a moose the other day, and it's you're just trying to think of these gargantuan animals just crossing the road. It's not really a big deal. And it's an immense wilderness. It's one of the few places I've walked on the planet where I found it's really still untouched by people. No one's really done too much of a number on it from the places I've visited. Done! Getting there was really nice. It was really impressive, especially because it was such a beautiful place. It was exactly as monumental as I'd hoped. And when I got there, I got so excited. I ran down all these rocks, and you go past this area you're really not supposed to enter because the waves take people in, and they just destroy people every year. People die all the time at Cape Spear because of it. And you get there and you dip your feet in, you just rubbing this water over your face, and you're extremely excited that you'd finally done it. Like you'd picked up this huge book that you'd never hoped you'd finish, and then you got to the last page, and the ending is exactly how you wanted it to be. So that's how I still think of it. It's a big moment, but I found the bigger moments were during the trip. Honestly, it was just, you'd see certain things, you'd appreciate it, and you realize how long you'd been gone and how much time you put into this, how much effort, and those were probably the more monumental things, and that was just a really nice cherry on top of it all. I think my trip kind of ended in River Bourgeois for me. I was done it in a real material, distant sense, and it was just nice to actually get to it and really permanently and officially say that it was over.
Done! Fuck you, Canada!
How do you feel right now?
I feel good. Let's go run up these cliffs. Run up these cliffs, Kyle.